There is a clay tablet in the British Museum that has been catalogued as routine astronomical observation since 1881. It is the size of a human hand. It is divided into 9 sections. 8 of those sections record the positions of fixed stars. The 9th records something moving, something crossing 4 named constellations on a trajectory the scribe rendered in angular degrees, not in metaphor. The tablet is catalogued K8538. In 2008, 2 aerospace engineers fed its star coordinates into modern software and found that every position converges on the same pre-dawn sky. June 29th, 3123 BCE. Nobody has fully explained what the scribe was recording. I found the Hempsel paper because I was looking for something else. A footnote in a British Museum catalogue had flagged tablet K8538 as an astronomical observation of uncertain content. That phrase, uncertain content applied to a tablet that had been in the collection since 1881, seemed worth following. The tablet was excavated from Nineveh in 1881. During the systematic clearing of the Great Mound the Assyrians had called Kuyunjik. Archaeologists had been pulling clay tablets from that site for decades, shipping them to London by the crate. Most were administrative, grain tallies, royal correspondence, temple records, the kind of documentation any empire generates in volume and quantity. The astronomical texts were filed separately, and there were thousands of those. Trained Assyrian scribes had watched the sky professionally for centuries, recording planetary positions, lunar cycles, eclipse predictions, and the appearance of comets, with a precision that still draws admiration from modern researchers. K8538 arrived in the British Museum collection alongside the rest and attracted no particular notice. What the tablet contains is 9 sections of cuneiform text. 8 of those sections record star positions, named constellations, angular measurements, reference coordinates of the kind that appear in every standard Assyrian sky catalogue. Nothing in those 8 sections would have distinguished K8538 from hundreds of similar tablets in the same collection. The 9th section is different. It describes an object moving across the sky. It records the object's trajectory, using the same angular notation the scribe applied to the fixed stars: altitude, direction, the specific constellations it crossed. No name is attached to it. No deity is invoked. It is recorded the way a trained observer records data. That detail had been in plain sight since 1881. Mark Hempsel was a lecturer in aerospace engineering at the University of Bristol. Alan Bond was a rocket propulsion engineer. They were not archaeologists. They were not ancient historians. They came to K8538 from outside the field entirely, which may be the reason they looked at it differently. They had no investment in the existing interpretation. What they brought was familiarity with orbital mechanics and access to computational astronomy software capable of running the night sky backward through time. The same tools used to calculate the positions of spacecraft relative to distant stars can calculate where those stars appeared from a specific point on Earth on a specific night in the past. The physics does not change across thousands of years. The math is exact. What Hempsel and Bond did was take every star coordinate in K8538 and run them backward, section by section. Each position in the 8 standard sections pointed to a specific night sky. The question was whether they all converged on the same one. They did. Every coordinate in K8538 converged on the pre-dawn sky above ancient Sumer on the morning of June 29th, 3123 BCE. Not approximately, not within a century. The convergence was precise enough that Hempsel published a specific calendar date. This same computational method had already been used to date the Babylonian Venus tablet, the Assyrian eclipse records, and several Egyptian astronomical texts. The approach is accepted in archaeoastronomy. What was unusual was not the precision. It was what the 9th section described once the date was established. An object entering the sky from the northeast, low on the horizon, crossing Pisces, then the star fields the Sumerians associated with what we now call Pegasus, descending southwest at an angle the scribe recorded as approximately 6 degrees above the horizon at its lowest observed point. The trajectory was oblique, a long, shallow arc, not a near vertical fall. This was not a planet. Planets follow known cycles. Assyrian scribes tracked their positions across decades and predicted their returns years in advance. This was not a comet on any documented cycle. It was an object the scribe had never seen before and recorded exactly once. using the same notation he applied nightly to objects he knew by name. The official explanation for K8538, prior to 2008, was that the 9th section described a routine meteoric observation of indeterminate significance. Unremarkable. But here is the detail that explanation cannot address. Assyrian scribes recorded omens in a recognized literary format. Deity names, formulaic phrases, predictive statements about kings, harvests, and the outcomes of battles. The 9th section of K8538 contains none of that. It contains measurements, altitude, direction, star fields crossed in sequence. It reads the way an instrument log reads, not the way a prophecy reads. The scribe was not interpreting what he saw. He was recording where it was and what path it was travelling. The date the software returned, June 29, 3123 BCE, placed that pre-dawn morning within the early Sumerian dynastic period, roughly contemporary with the founding of the first permanent cities along the Tigris and Euphrates river valleys. The watcher who made the original observation was alive during one of the least documented periods in all of human history. Almost nothing survives in writing from that era. The night sky he recorded has survived longer than any monument he could have built. He recorded what he saw. What he wrote was considered worth preserving by people who came after him, and it survived. June 29th, 3123 BCE. The date requires a moment to appreciate. It is not an estimate produced by rounding to the nearest dynasty. It is the specific night to which all 8 star position sections of K8538 converge when the skies run backward using the same physics used to navigate spacecraft. When 8 independent coordinates all point to the same pre-dawn sky on the same night, the date is not an interpretation. It is a calculation. What the 9th section describes, on that specific morning, is an object entering the sky from the northeast at a shallow angle. The scribe recorded its altitude at multiple reference points as it moved southwest across the sky. He recorded the star fields it crossed. Pisces, then the grouping the Sumerians mapped to what we now call the constellation Pegasus. He recorded its approximate elevation above the horizon at its lowest, observed point. An object moving at that angle, at that altitude, across that portion of the pre-dawn sky, viewed from the latitude of ancient Sumer, would have been travelling on a trajectory directed toward the northwest, toward Europe. That is where the second record appears. In the Utz Valley of the Austrian Alps, there is a geological deposit called Köfels. It is classified as a prehistoric landslide, a mass movement event in which an estimated 3,000 million cubic meters of rock broke from the valley walls and collapsed onto the valley floor. To put that figure in some context, it is among the largest known prehistoric mass movement events in the entire Alpine chain. The debris field is enormous. The disruption to the valley landscape was permanent. Geologists who studied the Köfels deposit in the 20th century placed it within a date range that the most precise radiocarbon analysis has since narrowed to approximately 3123 BCE, with error margins that encompass, but do not exclude, that specific year. The official explanation is a natural rock avalanche, post-glacial slope instability, glacial melt destabilizing the valley walls, the gradual failure of a mountainside already under stress from millennia of freeze-thaw cycles. This is a reasonable explanation. Large-scale alpine rock avalanches are documented throughout the geological record, except for the glass. Embedded within the Köfels debris field are fragments of a material called Köfelsite, a fused silicate glass formed when rock is subjected to temperatures and pressures that no landslide generates. Rock avalanches, regardless of scale, do not produce silicate glass. The temperatures required to fuse silicate rock in this way are produced in one of 2 geological contexts: high-velocity meteorite impact or atmospheric airburst, the kind of explosion that occurs when a large object, travelling at cosmic velocity, enters the lower atmosphere and disintegrates before reaching the ground. In an airburst, the object never physically contacts the surface. The thermal energy released in the disintegration is sufficient to fuse exposed rock across a wide area below the explosion point. The landscape is altered. The object is gone. Hempsel's argument is direct. The object recorded in K8538, following the trajectory the scribe encoded in angular notation, projected forward from the observation point in Sumer across the distance to Central Europe. intersects the Austrian Alps at a position consistent with the Ötz Valley. The angle of descent the scribe recorded, shallow, oblique, approaching from the northeast at low altitude, matches an approach vector that would place the terminal point of the trajectory in the Alpine region. The Köfels deposit is dated within a range that encompasses the night recorded on the tablet. The glass in the deposit is consistent with an airburst. The direction of the debris field is consistent with an energy release from above rather than a slope failure from the valley wall. 2 independent records, one night, one location. The theory has never been proven. It has also never been disproven. What the geological account of Köfels does not resolve is the glass. What the standard reading of K8538 does not resolve is why the 9th section contains measurements rather than omens. Each record, examined in isolation, has a conventional explanation that most specialists find adequate. Placed against the same date, they become harder to hold apart, but here is the detail nobody discusses. K8538 is an Assyrian tablet, inscribed around 700 BCE. The night it records is 3123 BCE. The gap between the event and this surviving copy is 2,400 years. The scribe who made K8538 was not recording what he saw. He was copying what someone else had preserved, and that copy was almost certainly made from an earlier copy, tracing a chain of transcription backward through Babylonian archives and Akkadian scribal schools to a Sumerian original made closest to the night itself. That original tablet does not survive. Not anywhere. What survives is the copy. The echo of a measurement taken at dawn 5,000 years ago by a man who wrote down exactly where the object was and what direction it was travelling, and someone, across 2,400 years of wars, fires, and collapsed empires, kept copying it forward. That is not how scribes treated routine observational records. Routine sky data was updated and superseded. One-time events were not preserved for millennia. This one was. The library that preserved K8538 was the largest archive the ancient world had assembled. Ashurbanipal, king of Assyria in the 7th century BCE, spent his reign collecting tablets from every temple, scribal school, and conquered city his armies reached. He sent agents specifically to acquire texts, not as trophies, but as instruments of power. In the ancient world, astronomical knowledge was not academic, it was strategic. Knowing how the sky behaved, when eclipses would occur, when planetary conjunctions would frighten enemy populations, gave a king an advantage that armies alone could not provide. By the time the library at Nineveh reached its final form, it held an estimated 30,000 tablets. Among them was K8538. In 612 BCE, a coalition of Babylonian and Median forces sacked Nineveh and burned the palace. The library burned with it. Clay tablets survive fire differently than papyrus does. The heat hardens the clay, and if the roof collapses quickly and debris seals the tablets beneath it, they can be preserved for millennia, which is what happened. When archaeologists excavated the mound of Kuyunjik in the 19th century, they found tens of thousands of tablets buried beneath the collapsed library. K8538 was among them. The original Sumerian tablet it was copied from was not. Here is what that means. The scribe who inscribed K8538, around 700 BCE, was not recording an observation he had made himself. He was copying from an earlier document. That document was probably copied from an earlier one still. The chain runs backward from K8538 through at least several generations of scribal transcription to an original record made as close as anyone ever got to the night of June 29th, 3123 BCE. Perhaps the original was made within living memory of the event. Perhaps it was made by the observer himself. That original tablet is gone, destroyed in one of the wars, fires, and palace sackings that punctuated the ancient world across the 2,400 years between the event and the surviving copy. What would it have said? Did it name what happened? Did it describe the light on the horizon after the object crossed it, the sound that followed minutes later, the columns of dust that persisted for days? Did it record what was found in the settlements closest to the trajectory? The copying chain survived. The original testimony did not. There had to have been a man. At a ziggurat somewhere in the Sumerian south, in the pre-dawn darkness of late June, someone was watching the sky. This was professional work. Sumerian astronomical observation was an organized discipline practiced by trained scribes who took regular readings and recorded them in standardized notation. He would have known the star fields he was looking at. He would have recognized immediately that what entered the sky from the northeast was not on any known cycle, not a planet following its predicted path, not anything his training had given him a name for. He watched it cross 4 constellations. He recorded its altitude at specific reference stars. He noted the direction it was travelling. He was not interpreting, he was measuring. That distinction is why the tablet survived. Omen texts were superseded. New interpretations replaced old ones as circumstances changed and predictions failed. But an observation record containing precise angular measurements of an anomalous event, rendered in the same notation used for planetary tables, would have looked like data rather than prophecy, something that might be needed later, something that could be checked against future observations, or used in calculations that hadn't been devised yet. Scribes copied it forward because it read like a record that mattered, even when they could not say exactly why. Across 2,400 years of successive dynasties, library fires, and collapsed empires, someone kept copying it forward. That is not how routine sky records were treated. The timeline compressed. June 29th, 3123 BCE, an object crosses the pre-dawn sky above Sumer. The observation is recorded, the record is copied, then copied again. Around 700 BCE, a scribe in Nineveh makes the copy that will survive. In 612 BCE, Nineveh burns and the tablet is buried. In 1881 it is excavated and shipped to London. For 125 years it sits in the British Museum collection, classified as routine. In 2008, 2 aerospace engineers run its star coordinates backward through time, and the sky above ancient Sumer on a June morning 5,000 years ago reappears on a screen. The tablet is still in the British Museum. The catalogue number is still K8538. The star positions the original scribe recorded are still readable, still calculable by anyone with access to the same software Hempsel used. The Köfels deposit is still in the Ötz Valley, still bearing its fused silicate glass, still dated within a range that encompasses the night encoded on the tablet. The object it describes has not been explained away. The glass at Köfels has not been explained away. The measuring was done once, in the dark, before anything we would call civilization had finished forming. The sky it recorded is still there, and archives, it turns out, are patient.